He owned 17 hotels across 3 continents. His name made executives tremble. One word from him could destroy careers, end businesses, ruin lives. But on a rainy Tuesday evening in March, a 23-year-old waitress looked him in the eye and said something that would shatter everything he believed about power. This is the story of how the most feared man in the hospitality industry learned that true strength doesn't come from making others small. And I promise you, by the end of this journey, you'll never look at success the same way again. Marcus Blackwell didn't build his empire by being kind. He built it by being ruthless. Born in Boston to a real estate mogul father and a socialite mother, Marcus grew up in a world where money solved everything and people were merely chess pieces. His childhood was a sequence of private schools, summer homes in the Hamptons, and dinner parties where business deals worth millions were discussed over wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent. By the age of 12, Marcus had already learned the most important lesson his father would ever teach him. Son, there are 2 types of people in this world: those who serve and those who are served. Make sure you're always the latter. His father, Richard Blackwell, was a legend in commercial real estate. Cold, calculating, and completely devoid of empathy. Richard taught Marcus that emotions were weaknesses, that compassion was for the poor, and that respect was something you took, never earned. At 14, Marcus watched his father fire his assistant of 20 years on Christmas Eve because she had asked for a small raise. When Marcus showed a flicker of sympathy, his father grabbed his shoulder hard and said, "That woman is replaceable. You are not. Never forget the difference." Marcus internalized every lesson. He graduated top of his class at Wharton, not because he loved business, but because he loved winning. At 25, he took his inheritance of $50 million and turned it into $500 million in just 7 years. Hotels, resorts, luxury properties across New York, London, Dubai. But Marcus didn't just want to own hotels. He wanted to own the finest hotels. And he wanted everyone who worked for him to know exactly who was in charge. His management style was legendary for all the wrong reasons. He would show up unannounced at his properties at 3 in the morning, white glove in hand, running his finger across surfaces looking for dust. If he found any imperfection, the entire night shift would be fired on the spot. No warnings, no second chances. He once made a head chef cry in front of a full kitchen because the sauce was half a degree too warm. He fired a concierge for smiling too much, saying, "This is a luxury hotel, not a circus." His employees called him the iceberg behind his back. Not just because he was cold, but because most of his cruelty was hidden beneath a polished surface. Marcus had 3 ex-wives, none of whom lasted more than 2 years. Not because they left him, but because he grew bored. In his mind, even marriage was a transaction. His first wife, a model, left when she realized he would never love her more than his quarterly earnings reports. His second wife, a lawyer, divorced him after he humiliated her at a charity gala by criticizing her speech in front of 300 people. His third wife, an heiress, simply vanished one day, leaving only a note that read, "You don't need a wife, Marcus, you need a mirror." But Marcus didn't care. He had money. He had power. He had influence. At 42 years old, he was worth $3.7 billion. Forbes featured him. Bloomberg interviewed him. The Wall Street Journal called him the Emperor of Hospitality. He lived in a penthouse in Manhattan that overlooked Central Park, drove a custom Rolls-Royce, and wore suits that cost more than most people earned in 6 months. He had everything, except one thing he didn't even know he was missing: humanity. Marcus had a routine. Every Friday evening he would visit one of his properties unannounced to inspect standards. It was really just an excuse to remind everyone who was boss. This particular Friday he chose the Sterling, his flagship hotel in Midtown Manhattan. 5 stars, 2 Michelin-starred restaurants, presidential suites that started at $15,000 a night. It was his crown jewel, and he ran it like a military operation. He walked through the gold-trimmed lobby, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. Staff members straightened their posture as he passed. The front desk manager's hands trembled slightly as Marcus approached. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwell," she said, her voice barely steady. Marcus didn't respond. He never did. He simply looked at her name tag, then at her desk, his eyes scanning for any microscopic flaw. Finding none, he moved on without a word. Behind him, the manager exhaled in relief. Marcus headed to the hotel's signature restaurant, Azure. It was 7:30 on a Friday night, and the restaurant was packed with Manhattan's elite. Businessmen closing deals, celebrities trying to stay discreet, old money meeting new money. The maître d' nearly knocked over a wine bottle when he saw Marcus enter. "Mr. Blackwell, we weren't expecting you, sir. Let me prepare your usual table immediately." Marcus nodded curtly. His usual table was in the back corner, positioned perfectly so he could observe the entire dining room. From there, he could see everything: which servers were moving too slowly, which tables weren't being attended to, which guests looked even slightly dissatisfied. As he sat down, Marcus noticed something unusual. There was a new waitress. Young, probably early 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was taking an order at a nearby table, and what caught his attention wasn't her appearance, but her demeanor. She was smiling, genuinely smiling, laughing at something a customer said. In Marcus's world, that was problematic. Employees should be professional, not friendly, he always said. We're selling luxury, not friendship. Her name tag read, Elena. Marcus watched her for the next 10 minutes. She moved with an easy confidence, never rushed, but never slow. She remembered orders without writing them down. She had a way of making each table feel like they were the only ones in the room. And worst of all, in Marcus's opinion, she seemed happy. Happy people in service industry jobs irritated him. It seemed fake, performative. Nobody could genuinely enjoy serving others, he thought. They were just acting for tips. Marcus snapped his fingers, a habit that his staff hated but never dared to comment on. Elena was at a nearby table, carefully explaining the evening's specials to an elderly couple. She didn't hear him. He snapped again, louder this time. Still nothing. She was fully engaged with her customers, describing the preparation of the Chilean sea bass with such enthusiasm you'd think she had caught the fish herself. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Was she seriously ignoring him? Him? The owner of this entire establishment? He snapped a third time, sharp and loud enough that several nearby diners turned to look. Elena finished her sentence with the elderly couple, smiled warmly at them, and only then turned to acknowledge Marcus. But she didn't rush over. She walked at the same calm, professional pace she had maintained all evening. When she reached his table, she had that same genuine smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Azure. I'll be right with you in just one moment. I want to make sure the kitchen has the couple's dietary restrictions noted correctly. I'll be back in 30 seconds. Before Marcus could respond, she was gone. He sat there, stunned. In his entire adult life, no service worker had ever made him wait. Ever. He was Marcus Blackwell. People dropped everything when he entered a room. His face flushed red. The couple near him were now ready to order, and Elena was taking her time with them, joking about how the husband always ordered the same thing while the wife liked to try something new each visit. They laughed. She laughed. Marcus seethed. When Elena finally returned to his table, Marcus was ready. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. It was the question he asked when he wanted someone to feel small. Elena looked at him with those clear, dark eyes. "I do, sir. You're Mr. Blackwell, the owner. Welcome. What can I get started for you this evening?" Her tone was respectful but not subservient. There was no fear in her voice. That bothered him more than the wait. "I've been sitting here for 5 minutes, Marcus said coldly. "In my hotel, guests don't wait 5 minutes for service." Elena's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in her eyes. Intelligence. She wasn't intimidated. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Blackwell. In your hotel, guests shouldn't wait. But the couple near you are also guests, and they had been waiting for 7 minutes before you arrived. I served them in the order they needed service. Fair is fair." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Shock. Not angry shock. Genuine shock. No one spoke to him like this. No one. "Fair is fair?" he repeated slowly. "Do you understand that I own this building? That I could have you fired before your shift ends?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "You could, sir. But that wouldn't make what I said any less true. Every person who walks through those doors is a guest, including you. And every guest deserves respect and proper service. That's actually one of the core values printed in the Sterling's mission statement. The one posted in the staff room. The one that has your signature at the bottom." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She had quoted his own mission statement back to him. The one he had written 10 years ago for a press release and promptly forgotten. The one that talked about treating every guest with equal dignity and respect. He had never actually meant it, of course. It was just corporate language. But this waitress, this nobody, was actually living it. "What's your name again?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Elena Morales, sir. And how long have you worked here, Elena Morales?" "This is my 3rd week." 3 weeks? She had been here 3 weeks and was already challenging him. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her. She should be trembling. She should be apologizing. She should be begging to keep her job. Instead, she stood there, pen and notepad ready, waiting for his order like this was a completely normal interaction. I'll have the ribeye, rare, with the truffle butter. No sides. Marcus's standard order. Elena wrote it down. Excellent choice. And would you like to start with any appetizers or a cocktail? No. Perfect. I'll have this to the kitchen right away. She walked away before he could say anything else, and Marcus realized that somehow, in that exchange, he had lost control of the conversation. He had been planning to assert his authority, to remind everyone in this restaurant who was in charge, and instead, a 20-something waitress had turned the tables on him. Literally. Marcus tried to focus on observing the restaurant, his original purpose for being there, but his eyes kept drifting back to Elena. She moved through the dining room like she owned it, not in an arrogant way, but with a confidence that came from genuinely caring about what she was doing. She refilled water glasses before they were empty. She noticed when a guest looked confused by the menu and offered help without being asked. She cleared plates at exactly the right moment, never interrupting conversations. She was, Marcus realized with irritation, exceptional at her job. His ribeye arrived 15 minutes later, perfectly cooked, presented beautifully. Elena set it down with that same warm professionalism. Your ribeye, Mr. Blackwell. Rare, as requested. Is there anything else I can get for you right now? Marcus cut into the steak. It was perfect. He hated that it was perfect. It's fine, he muttered. Elena smiled. I'm glad. Enjoy your meal, sir. And she was gone again. Marcus ate in silence, but his mind was racing. This waitress had done something no employee had done in 20 years. She had stood up to him. Not with aggression or disrespect, but with something more powerful. Quiet dignity. She had treated him like any other guest, refusing to give him special treatment despite knowing exactly who he was. And somehow, that felt like the greatest insult of all. When Elena brought the check, Marcus was ready for round 2. Tell me something, Elena. Do you enjoy humiliating your employer? She looked genuinely confused. I'm sorry, sir. I don't understand the question. You made me wait. You lectured me about my own mission statement. You've treated me like I'm nobody. Elena's expression softened, but not in a way that suggested fear. It was something closer to pity, which made Marcus even angrier. Mr. Blackwell, with all due respect, I didn't treat you like you're nobody. I treated you like you're somebody, like you're a human being deserving of honest professional service, the same way I treat everyone else. If that feels like humiliation to you, then maybe the problem isn't how I'm treating you. Maybe it's how you're used to being treated. She paused, then added quietly, or how you treat others. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Before he could respond, Elena continued, her voice gentle but firm. I've been here 3 weeks, and I've seen how people react when you walk in. They're terrified. Grown adults, some with 20 years in hospitality, literally shaking because the owner showed up. That's not respect, sir. That's fear. And fear doesn't build great hotels. It builds prisons. Marcus sat frozen, the check untouched in front of him. Every instinct told him to explode, to fire her on the spot, to make an example of her insolence. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she had said it, without malice or judgment. Maybe it was because deep down, in a place he hadn't visited in decades, he knew she was right. He had built an empire on fear. And in that moment, a 23-year-old waitress had just held up a mirror to show him exactly what that looked like. You're fired, Marcus said flatly. He expected relief at saying it, the satisfaction of putting someone in their place. But it didn't come. Elena simply nodded slowly. If that's your decision, Mr. Blackwell. But I hope you know that I wasn't trying to disrespect you. I was trying to do my job with integrity. And if that's not what you want from your employees, then you're right. I don't belong here. She started to walk away, then turned back. For what it's worth, sir. I've read about you, about your success. It's impressive. But I've also seen the way your staff talks about you when you're not around. And I think you deserve better than being someone people are afraid of. You deserve to be someone people respect because of who you are, not what you can do to them. She left the check and walked away, heading toward the kitchen to collect her things. Marcus sat there, the noise of the restaurant fading into background static. He looked down at the check. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, she had written, "Thank you for dining with us. I hope your evening improves. Elena." Not a single trace of sarcasm. Just genuine kindness from someone he had just fired. Marcus paid with his black card, left no tip, and stood up to leave. But as he walked past the kitchen, he heard voices. "Elena, what happened? Why are you crying?" It was the sous chef, a young man named David. "I got fired," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "I knew I would. But I couldn't watch him treat people like they're nothing. I've worked in restaurants since I was 16. My mom worked in restaurants her whole life. These jobs matter. The people who do them matter. And I couldn't pretend they don't." Marcus stopped walking. He should have kept going. Should have left the building and never thought about this again. But he found himself standing there, listening. "You stood up to Marcus Blackwell?" David sounded amazed and horrified. "Elena, he's destroyed people for less. He once fired an entire department because one person made a mistake." "I know," Elena said quietly. "But someone had to say something. These people work so hard, David. They have families, mortgages, dreams, and they spend every shift terrified of making one tiny mistake. That's not how people should have to live." There was a long silence. Then David said, "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the craziest." Elena laughed through her tears. "Probably both." Marcus walked away, but those words followed him. Out of the restaurant, through the lobby, into his waiting car. His driver started to speak, but Marcus held up a hand for silence. During the entire drive to his penthouse, he heard Elena's voice. "That's not respect, sir. That's fear." That night Marcus couldn't sleep. He stood by his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over Central Park, a view that had cost him $43 million. He had everything anyone could want. So why did he feel so empty? He thought about Elena's words, about his staff's fear, about his 3 ex-wives who had all left saying variations of the same thing. That he was impossible to reach, impossible to love, impossible to connect with. He thought about his father, about that Christmas Eve when Richard had fired his loyal assistant. Marcus had internalized that moment as a lesson in strength. But what if it had actually been a lesson in cruelty? What if everything he had been taught about power was wrong? What if true strength wasn't about making others small, but about lifting them up? The thought was so foreign, so contrary to everything he believed, that it almost made him laugh. Almost. At 3 in the morning, Marcus did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He opened his laptop and started reading. Not business reports or financial statements, but the personnel files of his employees. Not the numbers, the actual people. Maria, front desk, worked double shifts to pay for her daughter's college. James, concierge, studied architecture at night, dreaming of designing hotels instead of just working in them. Sophie, head of housekeeping, had been with the company for 12 years, never missed a day, had 3 commendations for excellence, and made $32,000 a year. Marcus read file after file, and with each one, something inside him began to crack. These weren't just chess pieces. They were people. People with dreams and struggles and lives that extended far beyond the walls of his hotels. And he had never once thought about them as anything more than resources to be managed and discarded when they failed to meet his impossible standards. The next morning, Marcus woke up to his phone buzzing. 15 missed calls from Richard, his general manager at the Sterling. He called back. "Marcus, we have a situation," Richard said nervously. "That waitress you fired last night, Elena Morales? Apparently, half the restaurant staff is threatening to quit in solidarity. They're saying you were unfair, that she was the best server we've had in years, that she actually cared about the guests and the team. I've never seen anything like this. What do you want me to do?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. In the old days, his response would have been immediate. Fire everyone who threatened to quit and replace them within a week. But something had shifted overnight. "Tell them I'll be there in an hour," Marcus said. "And Richard, don't do anything until I arrive." "Are you going to fire them all?" Richard asked, sounding hopeful in a disturbing way. "No," Marcus said slowly. "I'm going to do something I should have done a long time ago. I'm going to listen." 1 hour later, Marcus walked into the Sterling. But this time, he didn't stride through the lobby like a conquering general. He walked slowly, noticing things he had never noticed before. The receptionist who smiled at every guest, even the rude ones. The bellhop who was helping an elderly woman with too many bags, refusing a tip because, "It's my pleasure, ma'am." The maintenance worker cleaning a spill in the corner, making sure no one slipped, even though it was barely visible. He found the restaurant staff gathered in the kitchen mid-morning before the lunch service. They fell silent when he entered, that familiar fear returning to their faces. Marcus hated seeing it now. When had he started to hate it? "I came to talk about Elena Morales," Marcus began. Everyone exchanged nervous glances. "She was terminated last night, and I understand there are concerns about that decision." David, the sous chef, stepped forward, his jaw set with determination despite the trembling in his hands. Mr. Blackwell, with all respect, Elena was fired for being good at her job. She treated guests with genuine care. She helped train new staff on her own time. And yes, she treated you like a regular customer instead of royalty. If that's a firing offense, then I'm not sure any of us understand what we're supposed to be doing here. Marcus expected to feel anger. Instead, he felt something else. Shame. You're right, he said quietly. The words felt strange in his mouth. When was the last time he had admitted being wrong? The kitchen staff looked at each other in confusion. I'm sorry, sir? David said. I said you're right, Marcus repeated, louder this time. Elena Morales shouldn't have been fired. She was doing exactly what I should have wanted from all of you, treating every guest with dignity and professionalism, regardless of who they are, including me, especially me. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Marcus continued, the words coming faster now, like a dam breaking. For 20 years I've built this company on fear. I fired people for minor mistakes, humiliated staff in front of their peers, and created an environment where everyone is more worried about avoiding my wrath than actually doing great work. Elena pointed that out last night, and instead of hearing her, I fired her. That was wrong, and I'm here to make it right. A junior waiter named Tommy raised his hand tentatively, like a student in class. Are you actually apologizing? Yes, Marcus said, and realized he meant it. I'm apologizing, to all of you. You deserve to work in an environment where excellence comes from passion, not fear. Where innovation is encouraged, not punished. Where your humanity is recognized, not ignored. He paused, then added, Elena taught me that in one conversation. That says more about me than it does about her. So what now? Sophie, the head of housekeeping, asked. She had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. Are we supposed to believe that Marcus Blackwell, the iceberg, has suddenly had a change of heart? Forgive me, sir, but we've seen you destroy people. Why should we trust this? Her voice was challenging but not disrespectful. Marcus recognized that tone. It was the same one Elena had used. Honest, fearless. You shouldn't, Marcus admitted. Trust isn't given in a speech. It's earned through consistent actions over time. All I'm asking is the chance to earn it. Starting with bringing Elena back and apologizing to her personally. Do any of you know where I can find her? The staff exchanged glances. Finally, Maria from the front desk spoke up. She lives in Queens, but she won't be home. She's probably at St. Mary's Community Center. She volunteers there every Saturday, teaching English to immigrants. Has been for 3 years. Of course she does, Marcus thought. Of course someone like Elena spends her free time helping others. Thank you, Maria. He turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Effective immediately. I'm implementing a new policy. Any employee can request a meeting with me directly, without going through management, if they have concerns about working conditions, guest services, or company culture. Anonymous feedback forms will also be available. And there will be no retaliation for honest feedback. None. You have my word. Marcus left the kitchen to stunned silence. As he walked through the lobby, he noticed things he had never seen before. The way the staff interacted when they thought no one important was watching. They laughed together. They helped each other. They created a community despite his best efforts to keep them afraid and separated. How had he missed this? How had he spent 2 decades building hotels while being completely blind to the people who actually made them run? The drive to Queens took 45 minutes. A journey from Manhattan's luxury into working-class neighborhoods that Marcus hadn't visited since he was a child. St. Mary's Community Center was a modest building on a corner, slightly run down but clearly loved. Hand-painted murals decorated the walls. A community garden grew vegetables in carefully tended beds. This was the kind of place Marcus had always dismissed as charity work, as if helping people was somehow less important than making money. He found Elena in a large room filled with adults sitting at small desks, practice sheets spread before them. She was working with an older woman, patiently correcting pronunciation, celebrating small victories with genuine enthusiasm. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching. This was who Elena was when no one was paying her, when there were no tips involved, when she gained nothing except the satisfaction of making someone else's life better. I understand library, the older woman said carefully, smiling with pride. Elena beamed. Perfect, Mrs. Chen. That's exactly right. You're getting so good at this. My grandson, he helped me practice, Mrs. Chen said. He says his grandma speaks better English than his friends now. Elena laughed, a sound so full of warmth that several other students turned to smile. That's wonderful, You should be so proud. Marcus must have made a sound because Elena suddenly turned and saw him. The smile vanished from her face, replaced by surprise and wariness. She excused herself from Mrs. Chen and walked over. Mr. Blackwell, I didn't expect to see you here. Is there something I can help you with? Her tone was polite but distant. Professional. The warmth she had shown everyone else disappeared in his presence. He had earned that coldness. Can we talk? Marcus asked. Outside? Elena hesitated, then nodded. She told another volunteer she'd be back in a few minutes and led Marcus out to the community garden. They stood among tomato plants and bean trellises, an odd setting for what Marcus knew had to happen next. I owe you an apology, he began. I was wrong to fire you. You were right about everything you said. I have built my company on fear, and in doing so, I've become someone I'm not proud of. Elena's expression softened slightly, but she remained guarded. With respect, Mr. Blackwell, that's a nice speech, but apologies are just words. What matters is what comes after the words. You're right again, Marcus said, allowing himself a slight smile. So here's what comes after. I want to offer you your job back, with a promotion to restaurant supervisor and a 30% salary increase. But more than that, I want to ask for your help. My help? Elena looked genuinely confused. With what? Changing everything, Marcus said simply. You saw in 3 weeks what I've been blind to for 20 years. My hotels are successful financially, but they're broken culturally. The staff is terrified, turnover is high, and we're losing our best people because they're tired of being treated as disposable. I want to fix that, and I think you can teach me how. Elena studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for signs of manipulation or deceit. Marcus stood there letting her look. He had nothing to hide anymore. Why should I believe you? She asked finally. You've built an entire career on being ruthless. People don't change overnight just because someone called them out. You're absolutely right, Marcus said. People don't change overnight, but they can start the process of change overnight. And that's what happened to me last night, Elena. You held up a mirror and I saw something I didn't like. Something I haven't liked for a long time but was too stubborn or too afraid to admit. I saw a man who has everything and nothing at the same time. Success without significance. Power without purpose. He took a breath, choosing his next words carefully. My father taught me that there are 2 types of people. Those who serve and those who are served. I spent 42 years believing he was right. But you taught me something in 5 minutes that he never could. The people who serve aren't beneath anyone. They're the ones who hold everything together. And the people who are served are only as good as the respect they show to those serving them. Elena's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her face. You really meant that? About changing? It wasn't quite a question. I did. I do. Marcus gestured to the community center. Can I ask what you're doing here? Teaching English as a second language, Elena said. My mother came here from El Salvador when she was 19. She spoke no English. She cleaned houses for 20 years because language barriers blocked every other opportunity. I grew up watching her work 3 jobs, watching people treat her like she was invisible because she couldn't communicate perfectly. By the time I was 12, I was her translator. By 15, I was helping her fill out job applications, negotiate with landlords, understand legal documents. I saw how much potential she had, how smart she was, but how the world dismissed her because of an accent and imperfect grammar. Elena's voice grew stronger. So now I spend my Saturdays here, helping people like my mother learn the language that can change their lives, because everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves opportunity. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Your mother sounds remarkable. She was, Elena said softly. She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. By the end, she was head of housekeeping at a hotel in Brooklyn. Not fancy like yours, but she was so proud. She had a team of 30 people and they loved her because she treated them with respect. She used to say, Mija, the way you treat people when you have power shows who you really are. Anyone can be kind when they need something. Be kind when you don't. The words hung in the air between them. Marcus understood now why Elena had spoken to him the way she had. She hadn't been reckless or disrespectful. She had been honoring her mother's lesson, refusing to compromise her integrity even when facing someone who could hurt her career. Your mother raised an exceptional daughter, Marcus said quietly. And I'm sorry she's not here to see the impact you're making. Elena's eyes glistened, but she smiled. Thank you. That means more than you know. She looked back at the community center, then at Marcus. Okay, I'll help you, but I have conditions. Name them. First, This can't just be about good PR or making yourself feel better. Real change means uncomfortable conversations, difficult decisions, and following through even when it's hard. Can you commit to that? Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. Second, you have to actually listen to your employees, not just pretend to listen while planning what you'll say next. Really hear them, their frustrations, their ideas, their experiences, and you have to act on what you hear. I can do that. Third, and this is the most important one, you have to remember that the people who work for you are human beings first, employees second. They have sick kids and aging parents and money stress and dreams and fears. When you make decisions, you have to consider how those decisions affect their actual lives, not just your bottom line. Marcus nodded slowly. You're describing a completely different way of doing business. I'm describing the right way of doing business, Elena corrected gently. Profitable and ethical aren't opposites, Mr. Blackwell. They're partners. You've proven you can make money. Now prove you can make a difference. She extended her hand. Do we have a deal? Marcus shook her hand, feeling the calluses that came from years of hard work. We have a deal. When can you start? Monday, Elena said. I need to finish today's lesson, and I have a shift at the diner tomorrow. I work 3 jobs right now, so the supervisor position will actually be a relief. 3 jobs. This woman worked 3 jobs and still found time to volunteer every Saturday. Marcus felt shame wash over him again. How many of his employees were working multiple jobs just to survive while he added another 0 to his net worth? Elena, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you speak to me that way last night? You knew I could fire you, which I did. You knew I have a reputation for being vindictive. Why risk it? Elena considered the question. Because someone had to. Because staying silent when you see something wrong makes you complicit. And because… She paused, choosing her words. Because I saw something in you that I don't think you see in yourself. What's that? Potential, Elena said simply. You've accomplished incredible things, Mr. Blackwell. You're obviously brilliant and driven, but you're using all that power to build walls instead of bridges. I thought, maybe if someone showed you a different way, you might actually listen. Most people in positions like yours are too insecure to accept criticism. But you came here today. You apologized. You're asking for help. That takes courage most successful people don't have. Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Genuine humility. Thank you for taking that chance. I'll try to deserve it. Don't thank me yet, Elena said with a slight smile. Wait until you see what we're going to do to your management structure. You might want to fire me all over again. She was teasing, and Marcus found himself smiling back. A real smile, not the corporate grimace he usually deployed at networking events. I somehow doubt that. He pulled out his phone. Give me your number. We have a lot of planning to do before Monday. They exchanged information, and as Marcus walked back to his car, he felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Not hope that he could make more money or acquire more properties or climb higher on Forbes lists. Hope that he could become the kind of person who didn't need those things to feel worthwhile. The next 6 months were the hardest of Marcus's professional life. Elena wasn't gentle with him. She insisted he spend time in every position at his hotels: housekeeping, front desk, kitchen, maintenance, valet. You can't lead people whose jobs you don't understand, she said firmly. So Marcus, who hadn't made a bed in decades, learned to change sheets according to the Sterling standards. He learned how physically exhausting it was to clean 20 rooms a day. He learned what it felt like to be invisible, to have guests walk past you as if you were